Serious, people who did a long time, 5 years plus, in prison. What was your biggest shock of the outside world? You forget about the details of things. Like the way carpet feels on the bottoms of your feet. What it feels like to shower completely alone and without flip-flops on. In prison you have a certain number of smells that you're exposed to every day. Think of them as the first page in a book. But when you get out you have the rest of the book available. It's a lot to take in all at once. With social media and everything, there's the acknowledgement of the passage of time. When I got locked up I left a lot of friends and family behind and did 3 years on my own. No visitors, no calls, no mail. When I got out it was a trip to get on Facebook and Instagram and see how everyone I was ever close to had moved on with their lives. Having kids, getting married, getting fat, losing weight, starting and quitting jobs, falling out with each other, some even passing away. People think about a prisoner doing time, but don't understand that the time does them. You are frozen in it. While you're stuck in a constant loop of the same day every day, the rest of the world moves on without you. When you get home, you feel left behind. It's an anxious panic to catch up after that. Without flip-flops on. Man, this one killed me. It felt so weird to stand barefoot in a shower. It took weeks before I was able to tell my brain that this was okay and that it wasn't disgusting and I wasn't standing in a puddle of someone else's diseased babies. I did 6 years. My biggest shock was finding out you can't do much of anything without a smartphone. Companies don't even do paper applications anymore. They don't have TV in there that lets you keep culturally abreast to some extent. Oh, of course. We got basic cable and I was aware of the new technology, but I had no idea everyone was that dependent on it. Just money in general. You have no idea how to handle money. That takes a little time to get used to. For my cousin, it was the Game Boy Advance. This was a while ago, 2006 or so. My cousin, who'd been in prison for about 10-15 years, was finally getting out, so me and a bunch of the family went to pick him up, then go get breakfast at some diner. I was just a little kid at the time, so I was playing with my Game Boy Advance while we were at the restaurant. I'll never forget how much the game I was playing blew my cousin's mind. He saw it and immediately said, "Holy it, what is that? Look at those graphics. Oh my god, that's insane." His sister, "Are you seeing this?" It. To me, it was just some Star Wars game, but to my cousin, it was the future. It's actually through video games that me and him bonded a lot. I would tell him about or show him new stuff in the gaming industry and he would tell me stories about the games he would play growing up. Game Boy Advance wasn't really even the pinnacle of graphics at that time too. Huh, I know. I remember telling him this isn't even that great. Just wait until you see the other games I have at home. And he basically told me that he didn't see how games could look better. I have done 5+ years in prison. I was mostly amazed by smart TVs, with Netflix and browsers directly in the TV. And the 4-gram internet speeds blew my mind as well. My father was incarcerated from 2003 to 2016 and the biggest shock for him was technology and how much McDonald's has raised prices. LMAO. Man, I'm kinda at the frick McDonald's point. I have lived on that for most of my life and I will always have a soft spot for a 1 AM McDouble. But it's pricey enough at this point that much better tasting options are available for the same cost. A meal at McDonald's costs almost as much as a meal at Five Guys. Lunch at McDonald's costs like $11-14 here. Burger King is like $8. And the drive-through lines are always insane. I'll eat garbage. Don't worry about it. I won't pay $14 to eat garbage. And I certainly am not going to pay $14 and sit in my car for 30 minutes for garbage. My father was a counselor in a state prison for 12+ years. He told me the inmates would often talk about wanting to feel their body submerged in water, taking a bath, swim, etc. There are only showers, so that feeling up being weightless, floating, submerged was something these men would fantasize about. I work in jail, but when talking to a lifer who was about to go out on parole, I tried explaining smartphones, which blew his mind. Then I described Pokemon Go and he thought I was just messing with him. He got angry that I would make it up. I wonder if he's running around playing Pokemon Go now. I did 4 years. The day I got out my uncle took me to Walmart to get everything I needed. I went off by myself to get the things on my list. First I went to the lotion aisle. I was looking at all the lotion and became so overwhelmed by all the choices. Dry skin, healing, scented, etc. In there I had no choices and was given what I needed. Having all these options overwhelmed me. I gave my list to my uncle to get it for me. It was really hard to go out in public for a while. The first night I tried sleeping in a dark bedroom like I did before prison, but couldn't do it. My dad slept on the living room couch with a TV on, so I slept on the other couch. I needed to sleep around people and noise for a while until I got used to being alone again. I was surprised, because one of the things I miss the most was sleeping in a dark, quiet room, alone in a comfortable bed. For a long time I slept with my arm or a pillow over my head because of noise and bugs. Just got out. Weirdest thing was seeing all these damn scooters laying everywhere. That's weird to all of us. Man, they just sort of turned up freaking everywhere. Like in the space of a week I'd seen maybe 3 electric scooters that year and then they were littering the streets. And now they're mostly gone. It's freaking weird. I interned at a private criminal defense firm. The most notable shock of any of our released clients had to be one man who in prison for 16 years, odd amount, because he was paroled as part of plea deal. He had a daughter who was just a child at the time he was incarcerated, and when he got out, she had just had a baby, his first grandchild. She didn't tell him about the pregnancy beforehand. She wanted it to be a surprise upon his release. I wasn't there when our old client met his newest family member or his now adult daughter, but when he came in a few months later, he still couldn't talk about the new baby without crying happy tears. He had a picture in his wallet of his daughter when she was little he brought with him to prison, and showed us the new picture of his grandchild he keeps with it now. Second chance to be a pop. 5 years for aggravated assault and robbery. I was 3 months past my 18th birthday when I was sentenced. I lived in a small railroad town in south central PA. I guess one of the biggest shocks for me was how much the town had changed. The scrubland where we rode our bikes and dirt bikes is now a strip mall. My friend's driveway is now the main road through that part of town. Someone fixed up the old dive bar and turned it into a fairly popular restaurant and bar. Hell, whole developments popped up all over the place. And while I wouldn't exactly call the changes gentrification, the town certainly has improved as far as standards of living, without ridiculously increasing the cost of living. Shock number 2 was internet access. AOL, NetZero, Earthlink, etc. were the go-tos then, but phased out within a couple years of my release as faster access from cable companies became more widely available and affordable. Great question, OP. I don't often get to chime in on this sub. Shock number 2 was internet access. I have a friend who works as a corrections officer. He works a county jail, so he sees people who are awaiting trial, serving short sentences or awaiting transfer to long-term stays in prison. So he tends to see people at the start of their service to the state. One of the bigger shocks he sees affecting these new inmates is how they've suddenly been cut off from the internet. No social media, no YouTube, nothing, and this outage will go on for years. Yes, there are black market ways to get access, but the initial shock can be pretty severe. Most of us don't realize how addicted we really are to our access. I feel like my technology life has impacted my ability to read a book. It's like I have ADHD now regarding just sitting there and trying to read. Not enough stimulation or something, so I inevitably put it down and go back to my phone, tablet or laptop. I hate it. I grew up without a TV and have always been a huge reader, and although I am surrounded by books, I haven't finished one in a few years. I occasionally work with people who've just gotten out of jail or prison, and if it's a longer stay, a weird thing I've noticed is how often they are enamored of things like Spotify. Like once a guy had just gotten out after 10 years and the first thing he wanted to do was get Spotify set up. He tried to connect through Facebook, but couldn't remember his password. In all though, people getting out of jail are doing so much work to catch up. It's really distressing how little societal support there is if you don't have family to take you in. I was in for robbery too. Mandatory minimum of 5 years, 10 months. One of the hardest things for me once I got out was making choices. Let me explain. In prison, you might have 2 choices for shampoo if you're lucky. The first time I went shopping for hygiene essentials was at Target. I remember being so overwhelmed by the amount of choices for shampoo and having no idea which one to get. I stood in that aisle and cried for a few minutes before I just left without getting anything. My older bro was in 4-4 and he had the same struggle as you. Any choice he had to make for himself had him overwhelmed, and understandably so. When asked what boxes he wanted, he just stood there in the aisle staring at them until one of us perked up to help him, and it amazed me in all honesty.